Christ Jesus. Thunder phone. Thunder phone, man. Oh, you love Christ Jesus.
Iseth.
Hi.
You know, it's about 3 in the morning here. What's so urgent? Why are you calling me?
Listen, I have this video here, and that woman has such a strong accent. I need you to translate it for me.
All right. Let me hear this.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Haven here.
You kind of picked the wrong sort of Southerner there. I'm an Aussie.
Yeah, exactly. Austin, Texas. That's exactly why I thought of you.
No, a little further south than that. The other Aussie from Australia.
Nonsense. Australia's to the north of Texas, first of all, and they all speak German there.
Yeah.
Now stop making excuses and help me out.
Good. So now they're gonna need subtitles for both of us. All right, Iseth, I'll grab a beer.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Haven here.
Hi, Lisa. Who's Lisa?
And I have a critical report that I want to share with you. Have you personally been infected or impacted by the globalist depopulation agenda?
I love the word choice. Infected by an agenda. Hey everyone, welcome. Put your gas masks on to avoid getting infected by the globalist agenda virus.
I've had a few strange infections in my time, but not the globalist depopulation agenda infection. That is a new one for me, and I once bunked with Charlie Sheen. That'll sure leave an impact. I assume she might be meaning infected literally, which scares me to no end. Not the threat of deadly diseases, but she thinks they have something to do with a global depopulation agenda.
Now, those of you who listen to my channel know very well some of the depopulation agents being used by the globalists, and I'm gonna get into some of that, kind of scratch the surface.
Okay, so due to you, there are agents, meaning substances that cause a chemical or physical effect or reaction, that can infect you and are used by globalists, which means people advocating for a country management that is based on worldwide necessities instead of national ones, and they do this to reduce the population. May I point out that if there really was a globalist conspiracy to control all the people, it would be very stupid to make people stop procreating. I mean, who are you really going to control if there is no one left to be controlled because you got rid of everyone? And either way, if that is their goal, they do a rather poor job at it.
What about special agents? Agent 91, 42, 007, 86, 99, 69. They. Special agents that use chemical agents for their globalist depopulation agenda. It's all so clear now.
But in this video, I also want to address 10 symptoms that you may be experiencing as a result of the globalist slow kill depopulation initiation or agenda that is now underway.
Alright, so 10 symptoms coming from globalist slow kill. Okay, so stuff that is meant to either reduce population through infertility or something that kills people before they can reproduce, or maybe just doesn't make them want to reproduce, or something. Let me have a guess. Video games perhaps?
Affordable birth control?
Aliens from planet Nibiru?
Chemicals in the water to turn people gay?
No, we've tried those. They only work on frogs.
Oh.
Well, for starters, many of you are aware that they have a lot of depopulation agents. One of those being chemtrails, where they drop aluminum, strontium, and barium on our bodies. Imagine all these heavy toxins on us on a daily basis. But it's not just chemtrails.
Not even a minute into this video, and already the woo is so strong with this one that it has broken my BS meter. I think the only thing to have outlasted the chemtrail-contrail BS on the internet has been the notorious toilet roll over or under debate. But at least that is preferential. There is no debate about chemtrails. They're just blinking contrails from the jet exhaust and changing pressures behind the damn massive engines. A chemtrail is the word given by fine young ladies like Lisa here who believe there are chemicals being released from the planes to do any number of things, from controlling us to killing us. Strange. None of that has happened yet, despite the solid century of aviation and documented history of these chemtrails. The word contrail is short for a condensation trail because that is what it frickin' is, not a chemtrail, Lisa.
Now that the contrails are out of the way, let us have a little chat about the elements you mentioned, Lisa. There was a study that seemed to show a statistically significant inverse correlation between sperm and aluminum. As we all know, correlation is not causation, however, and I am not aware of any further research on that particular issue, so we can neither claim that aluminum has nothing to do with it, nor can we claim that it has something to do with it. All we can do is to acknowledge that there is a correlation and then put a to-do sticker on it and wait for more research and more conclusive results to come in. There are certain facilities that, as a result of water treatment, increase the amount of aluminum in the water, but that alone wouldn't really cause any issues because the body tosses it out rather fast. You would need to combine several sources of aluminum surplus to the water treatment in order for it to become an issue. So if you're concerned, maybe you should stop eating the tinfoil hats that you regularly put on your head, instead of blaming the water. Just kidding. The next chemical you mentioned is strontium. And just like with aluminum, also with strontium, it is a matter of how much of it you have in your body, instead of if or if you do not have it in the body in the first place. And in the case of strontium especially, it also matters strongly what it is bound with. In fact, in small doses, certain compounds of strontium are actually needed in the body. Strontium granulate, for example, can be used in certain drugs to treat osteoporosis. Or there might, for example, be strontium chloride in your toothpaste since it reduces the pain sensitivity of your teeth. And a very radioactive strontium version is currently used for the treatment of prostate cancer, although I would not recommend the daily consumption of that last one. I have not found any evidence that strontium is linked to infertility. On the other hand, I have found a study that seemed to show an increase of fertility when the people were treated with a particular strontium compound. So no, unless you place yourself in the midst of a reactor or overdose on supplements, strontium utterly fails the globalist infertility agenda. Last but not least, barium. Now, this element is indeed toxic and should not be swallowed, inhaled or put into your body in any other way, shape or form. To our luck, it is rather rare, rarely used and usually present in such small doses that they do not pose any health risks. However, in spite of all the unpleasant side effects barium has, I have found no evidence that it causes cancer, infertility or birth defects of any sort, which makes it rather useless to the globalist depopulation agenda too.
How about fluoride? Fluoride, a chemical that they are adding to your water supply that has known factors that mess with your brain.
See, smartass, this is where you should have talked about aluminium. And even then, you'd have a pretty crap case. Untreated water can cause far worse things than a modestly elevated amount of aluminium consumption. Fluoride, just as most other consumable substances, is perfectly safe when ingested in low quantities and gets unsafe when you consume too much of it. This is why when it's used, it's properly regulated for optimal, safe and effective levels. It's also considered safe for consumption even when pregnant, as long as you stick to the limits. The reason it's put in the water is because it's cheap and efficient tooth decay prevention method, especially for children. In other words, it saves you from running to the dentist every few months. And when it is added to the water, there are guidelines in place to keep the amount to a very decent standard. If you're worried that you happen to live in a fluoride-rich environment and consume too much, you can let your consumption be checked and change your diet a bit. But overall, that is a very uncommon problem. You know what is a common problem for those areas without fluoride in the water? Tooth decay.
But since we talk about water pipes, you know which metal I find frighteningly missing in your list here? Lead. The reason lead was removed from fuel and eventually banned entirely in the US in 1995 is because it genuinely has a very harmful side effect on human bodies. It can cause all sorts of things, from high blood pressure all the way up to seizures, hearing loss and heart disease. And just to stay on the topic about depopulation, prolonged exposure to lead can lead to fertility problems. Instead of the bit of fluoride that people add to your water, shouldn't you perhaps be a bit more concerned about the leaded water pipes that are still present in many older buildings in the US? How is it that you are so concerned about the fluoride, but you're not concerned at all about the lead? And yet somehow that metal didn't even cross your mind. I wonder why.
Basically, making your brain more subtle, more subjective, and less volatile, if you will, but more submissive to leading authorities. That is exactly what some of these do.
Okay, hold up. Forget the lack of evidence for your claims just for the moment. If fluoride made you more submissive, how in the hell does that serve depopulation exactly? Last time I checked, which is often, submissive people didn't seem to lack the necessary means to procreate, and I can point at quite a few religious cults that have been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that submissive people can and will procreate to a level that makes even rabbits blush.
Or vaccines, which we know have caused high risk in children as far as autism is concerned.
Okay. Vaccines don't cause autism! Relax. Due to the research that has been made so far, we know that autism is not caused by vaccines. We know also that it tends to run in families. Certain gene mutations, for example, increase the risk that a child develops autism, and although there are certain outside influences that can increase the risk of autism, such as the parents' age or complications during pregnancy or birth, vaccines have no part in it. The only thing this misguided propaganda leads to is stifling or delaying the eradication of dangerous diseases, such as, for example, tetanus, that infection where you have agonizing muscle spasms for several weeks, and if you are one of the unlucky 10%, it just flat out kills you.
Not to mention the very obvious fact that you are choosing the high risk of death over essentially non-existent risk of a brain condition one can easily live a full and happy life with. It is also abhorrent to use autism for a misleading and in fact dangerous agenda, attempting to highlight autism as not only harmful, but that there is something wrong with being autistic in the first place. So not to overemphasize the point, but vaccines do not cause autism! That is bullshit.
And it's not just that. Things like Fukushima.
Fukushima? Did she just bring Fukushima into this? The Fukushima incident was a nuclear power plant failure after an earthquake and subsequent major flooding. Unless you want to claim the people conspired to cause the earthquake with specific projections of the tsunami to target a nuclear power plant, this seems just a rather far-fetched allegation, I'd say. At best, you could make the case that the radioactive substances that have evaded the site are harmful and have impact on the population. However, while on the coast of Fukushima the radiation was obviously pretty strong, by the time it reached America it was so diluted that you might mistake it for a homeopathic remedy sold from one of your favourite alt health propaganda websites maybe. Several authorities and independent scientists have, since then, been monitoring the fish and water without any sign of significant radiation increase. So given that information, at best you can make the argument that this globalist conspiracy has targeted Japan, not the US of A.
By the way, curious side note for those of you who didn't live during Chernobyl or lived too far away from it to have heard about this. Probably the most harmful isotope escaping a nuclear power plant is iodine-131, which has a half-life of 8 days. That means that it decays very quickly and is basically depleted within months. However, it is also extremely harmful when one gets exposed to it. After the Chernobyl incident, there were a good 4,000 or so thyroid cancer cases in children and teens, directly related to that incident. And that is because the thyroid absorbs pretty much any sort of iodine that the body gets exposed to, because it needs this element to produce metabolism hormones. However, iodine 131 is also used as a treatment for thyroid cancer for the exact same reason. And right after the Chernobyl incident, people were advised to increase the consumption of iodine-containing salt in an attempt to reduce the instances of thyroid cancer caused by the radiation, which just gets to show that elements aren't just by default beneficial or harmful, and that the context, dose, and composition of elements is very, very important.
Things like Fukushima, toxins in the water that are causing pollutions of our water supply.
I'd like to know how they managed to put the toxins in all the private wells and bored water, let alone the extent of whatever toxins they must have to use to effectively pollute a massive water reservoir to the extent which it would be enough parts per million to actually be harmful in any way, let alone to specifically affect fertility rates and nothing else without being detected by all the independent scientists who analyze these things, and then to ensure that set toxins won't be filtered out by the local council and private water filters, which are everywhere these days. What about places like Australia? You know, here, where a vast majority of our water supply is direct rainwater into private rainwater tanks and reserves, privately filtered. It seems this hypothesis has many flaws. If you pulled your head out of your American manufactured bubble, you might see that.
And how about GMOs and toxins in our foods, where they're purposefully messing with our food supply and even removing some of the vital things like seeds from the food sources?
In great contrast, in fact, the GMO foods are generally specifically produced to be better for us with far less risks than naturally growing fruits and veg. A great example is the banana. Go eat a wild banana and you'll be unpleasantly surprised. Many other fruits have been specifically modified, be it through selective reproduction or genetic manipulation, to produce less or no seeds, have stronger or a fuller taste, be juicier, combined to create entirely new plants. Corn, man! From wheats to melons, carrots, apples and tomatoes, none of those good, healthy, homegrown, fresh foods are natural. They have all been genetically modified in some way by humans. These changes happened hundreds of years ago for a lot of them, and strangely, since then, our lifespans and population growth have somehow still exploded in the last century, despite consuming so many genetically modified foods.
Nobody really knows exactly the repercussions that we have.
Technically, it's more the diet that would have repercussions on us, not we on it. We don't go out punching bananas for being seedless. Well, same people don't, at least. And when there are obvious repercussions, we do actually see them. For example, if in a place people start eating too much, you see a statistical increase of obesity and type 2 diabetes in many cases. In places where people have grave vitamin A deficiencies in their nutrition, you will find a lot of cases of child blindness. And if people drink, for example, contaminated water, they tend to get sick and brought to hospital. And hey, are you sleeping? And you guys are sleeping too? I'm gonna get a buzzer, guys. Talking about views, you should definitely go over to Not Your Witness and subscribe. You should also consider pledging on Patreon if you like what we do. And please stay tuned, because there is far more and far more crazy to come on our channels. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great evening.
All I wanna do is live.